Are you starting to realize that someone close to you might be a narcissist? You may be feeling anxiety, fear, guilt, and emotional exhaustion. Maybe you feel like you're becoming a shell of your former self. If so, you may be trapped inside a series of psychological games. Here are 5 mind games narcissists commonly play in relationships. Game number 1, pretending not to understand. You clearly explain what's bothering you. They respond with, "What do you mean? I don't understand what you're talking about." So you explain yourself again. Then you explain yourself again until you're too exhausted to continue. And somehow, the original issue never gets solved. Game number 2, deflect and attack. You ask them why they lied. Instead of answering, they attack you. Suddenly, the conversation becomes about your mistakes. They bring up things you did months ago. Now you're defending yourself instead of asking questions, and the original problem disappears again. Game number 3, deny and distract. You show them proof of what happened. They deny it completely. "That never happened. You're remembering it wrong." Then they quickly change the subject. Eventually, you start questioning your own memory, and that's exactly the point. Game number 4, psychic reading. They claim to know exactly what you're thinking.
Instead of asking what you're thinking, they assume they already know. They act as though they can see inside your mind and understand your motives better than you do. Once they've decided why you're doing something, your explanation no longer matters. Let's say you're concerned about something they've done. Maybe you're trying to discuss a problem calmly. Instead of listening, they accuse you of trying to control them. Suddenly, the conversation isn't about the problem anymore. Or maybe you're hurt by something they said. You explain that their words affected you. Rather than acknowledging your feelings, they insist you're angry because you're jealous, insecure, or selfish. Notice what happens here. They don't respond to your actual feelings. They respond to a version of you that exists only in their imagination. The longer this continues, the harder it becomes to trust your own emotions. You start wondering whether they're seeing something about you that you're unable to see yourself. That's why psychic reading is so effective. It slowly disconnects you from your own inner voice and replaces it with theirs. Over time, you become less confident, less certain, and more dependent on their interpretation of reality than your own. And once that happens, manipulation becomes much easier because you're no longer trusting yourself. Which brings us to the 5th and final game, reframing. This is where reality itself starts to feel distorted. Reframing happens when they take something that clearly happened and completely change the meaning of it. The facts stay the same, but the story changes. Imagine you're having an argument and they say something genuinely hurtful. Maybe they insult you, mock you, or say something they know will upset you. Naturally, you react because almost anyone would react in that situation. But the moment you react, the entire conversation changes. Suddenly, nobody is talking about what they said anymore. The spotlight moves directly onto your reaction. Now you're being told you're too emotional, too sensitive, too dramatic, too difficult. And before you know it, you're defending your reaction instead of discussing their behavior. This is why so many people leave these conversations feeling mentally exhausted. They know something unfair just happened, but they can't quite explain what it was. In some cases, you may even end up apologizing, not because you were wrong, but because you're tired and just want the argument to end. Now, let's step back for a moment, because when you look at all 5 of these games together, something very interesting starts to appear. Pretending not to understand, deflecting and attacking, denying and distracting, psychic reading, reframing. They all look different on the surface, but every single one of them is designed to achieve the same thing, to make you confused. Because confusion is where control begins. Once you start doubting your own memory, your own feelings, and your own judgment, it becomes much harder to stand your ground. And when someone no longer trusts themselves, they often begin relying on the manipulator to define reality for them. The good news is that once you can see these patterns clearly, you can begin protecting yourself from them. So let's talk about what you can actually do when you're dealing with someone who uses these tactics regularly.
The first step may sound harsh, but it's incredibly important. Give up hope and allow yourself to grieve. Grieve the relationship you wanted. Grieve the future you imagined. Grieve the person you hoped they would eventually become. Many people stay trapped because they're still waiting for the version they met in the beginning to come back. But sometimes the version you fell in love with was only a small part of the story, not the full reality. The second strategy is known as the gray rock method. The idea is simple. You stop becoming an emotional source of entertainment for the narcissist. Instead of arguing, explaining, defending, or reacting emotionally, you become calm, neutral, and predictable in your responses. This doesn't always stop the behavior immediately. In fact, some narcissists may become more aggressive at first because their usual tactics are no longer working. But over time, many manipulators lose interest when they stop receiving the emotional reactions they were looking for. The third thing you can do is stop constantly explaining how you feel. This sounds strange, but it's incredibly important. When someone repeatedly uses your feelings against you, every emotional conversation becomes another opportunity for manipulation. This doesn't mean you should never express yourself. It simply means you should be careful about who earns access to your deepest emotions.
The fourth step is coming back to yourself. Because narcissistic relationships slowly pull your attention away from your own life. You stop focusing on your goals, your hobbies disappear. Your energy becomes completely consumed by managing the relationship. Recovery often begins when you start investing in yourself again. Your health, your goals, your friendships, your future. But even after understanding all of this, many people still struggle to leave. So why is it so difficult? Because you're not only remembering the bad moments, you're also remembering the good moments that made you fall in love in the first place. Part of you keeps hoping that if you're patient enough, understanding enough, or loving enough, things will finally change. In many cases, the answer goes even deeper. Some people are unknowingly repeating emotional patterns they first learned in childhood. When a child experiences emotional abandonment, they often grow up believing that love must be earned through sacrifice, patience, or suffering. The solution is not changing the narcissist. The solution is healing yourself, trusting yourself again, and building a life that no longer depends on their approval. So tell me, have you ever dealt with a narcissist? Or maybe you're dealing with one right now? Let me know in the comments below. And if you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.